we can be fruitful together in all of life. What does that actually look like? And I want us to do a couple of things. I want to invite us to notice something first of all. And the reason why I think this is important is that we can sometimes forget to look at what God is doing right where we are right now. And it's one of Paul's invitations to us in that first chapter in Colossians verse 6. It says, he writes, having given this greeting to the Christians and said how thankful he is for them. And he goes on to say why he's thankful. He said, all over the world, this gospel is bearing fruit and growing, just as it has been doing among you. Now, I don't know whether you remember some of the things that Tash was describing to us about this early Christian community in Colossae, but they weren't the finished article. There were a number of things going on there that were challenges and struggles to them. Well, as we go on to read in the letter to the Colossians, we'll be reminded that there were all kinds of competing philosophies going on, and some of those early Christians were pulled a little bit this way and that and the other. The cultural context was challenging. There were lots of worship of other gods, particularly the goddess Artemis. And of course, it was a Roman occupied territory. So there's this call to worship to Caesar, to make Caesar Lord. So this was not an easy peasy sort of all is well kind of context. This was a lot of struggles going on, and people were, it wasn't straightforward for people. But nevertheless, Paul says, I have noticed something here. I have noticed that you are bearing fruit and the gospel is growing because God is at work through you. And so one of the things that I'm going to invite us to do when we come into breakout groups is to do just that, just to notice where God has been pleased to grow fruit amongst us right where we are in the lives, even in lockdown lives that we're having to live through right now. And one of the reasons why I think it's helpful to have a conversation about it is sometimes we kind of think that just some things are fruitful for God, and God is pleased by certain kinds of fruit, but maybe we don't always spot other kinds of ways in which God invites us to demonstrate the fruit of living in a life in faith with him, in step with the Spirit. So I'm going to suggest one or two lenses that we might want to look through afresh to see if we can see afresh how God is being fruitful. And that really, I suppose, will then take us to the next little question that I'm going to give us in our breakout groups very shortly. And it comes off these verses in chapter 1 of Colossians as well. And if you notice, having said these words of encouragement to the people, to the believers in Colossae, Paul then says, not only am I noticing that you're bearing fruit, but he's saying, I've not stopped praying for you. I've not stopped asking God to fill you with the knowledge of his will through all spiritual wisdom and understanding. And why does he pray this? Well, he says, we pray this in order that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and may please him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work. And so the Bible is full of this fruitfulness language. The Bible is full of this imagination for God's people that they would be fruit bearing in all kinds of ways. Now, I was very interested in that little poll that we did earlier. Bananas, as it happens, are my favorite fruit, and interesting that so many people love bananas. But as you know, bananas are not the only fruit that we all like, and certainly not the only fruit available to us. There is just this plethora, isn't there? This just glorious wonder, variety of fruitfulness and colour and taste and shape and size and all kinds of that. And I think that for me reminds me that being fruitful for Jesus, is not just one thing. It's lots of different kinds of things. And so when we think about this question, how am I being fruitful for Jesus where I am right now, or how could I be? Often we go to Galatians 5, and it's a great place to go, isn't it? Because it talks about the fruit of the Spirit as love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. In other words, here's a way in which we might model godly character where we are, whether that's in our families, it's in our workplaces, whether that's with difficult relatives in our extended families or difficult neighbours. Those opportunities to display the fruits of the Spirit, of course, that's one way in which we might bear fruit to the glory of God. Another way we might think about being fruitful, of course, is being a messenger for the gospel. And we heard that wonderfully in Liz's story about how she and other Christians in the government, in the civil service, who'd been able to do different things. There's gospel choir and in the canteen, how lovely, and Easter eggs, and then that super opportunity at Christmas with the virtual carol service, and so many people come to that. Well, don't we praise God for that? And the different ways in which different ones of us at different times have the opportunity just to say that word about the hope that we have in Jesus, the confidence, the assuredness that takes away our anxiety, the inspiration for living a life worth living, the ways in which we've met Jesus in answers to prayers or things that he has provided for us. So many different ways in which we might be a messenger for the gospel. And so modeling godly character and being a messenger of the gospel are two sort of lenses that we might look at or look through to say, I wonder, in what way am I modeling godly character in my family right now? What can I celebrate here? Or what opportunities has God given me this week, or might he give me next week, to just say something about the hope that we have in Jesus, the wonder of who Jesus is, however small or extended that conversation might be. But supposing we just don't get that kind of opportunity this week, is that meaning that we're not particularly fruitful? I want to suggest that that's not the case. I just want to give you four little lenses, maybe just to look through and say, I wonder, can I notice what God has been doing in my life and through me? And can I just celebrate that as fruit that brings glory to the Lord? And so here they are. Here's one: being a mouthpiece for truth and justice. And again, we see that in the testimony that Liz shared for us, how she was able to notice something that would have led to an injustice around those garment workers who were no longer able to earn money. And she noticed that, and she spoke out for it, and she did something about it, and something happened. Isn't that tremendous? And sometimes we get big opportunities like that, and sometimes we just get small opportunities just to snuff out that gossip, that bit of gossip in a conversation or whatever that might be. And sometimes we have the opportunity just to shape the values and the ethos, the sort of the culture, if you like, of the context that we're in, whether that's our work team or whether it's our family or whether it's some other network that we're part of. How might God be inviting us, and how is God, or perhaps has already helped us maybe to create a culture of thankfulness in our homes, or maybe to cultivate a much deeper and richer collaboration in our teams, or to stop somebody being picked on in our workplace, or small things and large things. How has God enabled us to be the right person in the right place, his person in the right place, to do the work that he's called us to do? And of course, there's making good work, and by that I mean not just the stuff that some of us might get paid for, but the things that the tasks that we get to do day by day. The small, they're taking out the bins, they're putting food on the table, raising the next generation, creating investment that will enable better food production in Africa. What's the work of our hands that we can thank God that He's given us to do, that makes a difference, that bears fruit in our world? And then finally, there's ministering grace and love. What opportunities might He be giving you day by day, right where you are, particularly in these COVID times, to help somebody else know that they're loved, to extend grace where it's undeserved, to be that minister in God's place. So 6 lenses, as it happens, beginning or having an M in them: modeling godly character, making good work, ministering grace and love, moulding culture, shaping culture, being a mouthpiece for truth and justice, a messenger of the gospel. So I wonder, just looking through those lenses, how are we as households, as Latimer communities, as a church, bearing this kind of fruit where God has placed us right now? And I wonder, does this spark ideas of how He might be inviting us to stretch ourselves into areas of greater fruitfulness, richer fruitfulness in these times? And what these are, just to fund these aren't intended to be any kind of, oh, here's another do list. No, these are just intended to be lenses that help us to see afresh where God is already work and give Him the praise and glory for that, and to see afresh opportunities that He might be giving us right now, right where we are. So we're going to go into breakout groups for a short time. Tasha's going to do that. What I'd love us to do while we have this time together is to very briefly, each person says, well, explains where God has placed you. So where has God placed you? Just very, very briefly. And then just thinking about those different lenses, perhaps talk together about how we are already bearing fruit where God has placed us. And please use that as an opportunity not to be reticent or shy about that, but to encourage one another in these times. And it's really great to have the opportunity to know what God is doing in our lives right now. So here's an opportunity to discover that. So how are we already bearing fruit? And then perhaps think about, some ideas that perhaps this has sparked, what fruit might God be asking you to bear where He's placed you right now.